You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
يلمين هناك لشوارشتايجر
pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
It's the magic of the cup, Kevin. Magic.
It is, right? Last night in both North American countries that we cover soccer in, Canada, United States, it was the magic of the cup.
U.S. Open Cup finished off its fourth round. It's fourth round, right?
Yes, fifth. I think it's the fifth
round.
one. Yeah.
They're setting up the quarterfinals. It's round of 16. They finished up the round of 16. And, of course, the Voyageurs Cup, the Canadian Championship here in Canada, the final. And, oh, my heavens, did it end in dramatic fashion. If you don't know yet, let me set the stage a little bit. Kevin's got some music playing here. That's you want to cue that up, Kevin, while I set the stage for what happened?
Overachievers. We are nothing without
this is
eventual
dramatic.
believers.
Unbelievable draw.
Just got to listen to this for a second. It's very exciting. All right, so here's the situation, guys. After TFC plays the first leg, and I think they had the front foot. We talked about this. They're up 1-0 coming into this game. First half, scoreless. Second half, minute and a half into the second half, Vancouver scores. They tie the tie. They take the lead in the game 1-0. The second goal comes a few minutes later. All seems lost for the Toronto FC, for the mighty Reds, for the mighty Toronto Football Club. But yet, Captain Canada, Will Johnson, at the end,
Sacrifices himself.
94 minutes and 13 seconds into the game, he hits the back of the net. It was, in fairness, it was a bit of a bit of a mess at the back for Vancouver. I don't necessarily know if Toronto created that goal so much as they took advantage of the opportunity. But the bottom line is that you can find it on Reddit and lots of different places. You can see the highlight out there. But the bottom line is this: the Toronto FC on the away goals. They had their Cameron Porter moment. Basically, they scored a goal to go through at the death, and by go through, I mean win the championship. They won a cup. They got some silverware. They got to drink some Budweiser out of it. There's lots of great vines out there. It was nice to see. It was a nice night out for the Toronto supporters. I was out at the local pub here, so if I'm a little slow today, you know why. Good times though, and champions. 15th Voyageurs Cup, a competition that was fan-driven, fan-directed, fan-purchased, 15 years now, and I think that's a remarkable accomplishment unto itself. And our friend Daniel Squizzato got to give the trophy.
Even though we didn't see it on TV, they announced him, and we figured that he gave the trophy, and he said hi, apparently. But we didn't see him. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but they didn't show him on TV.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't get Daniel on TV. We've seen there's a famous picture of
Lord Bob. Hello, Ben. Hello, Ben Massey.
Ben Massey out there was given the trophy to Toronto a few years ago when he was still a Whitecaps fan, which is still occasionally thrown around by TFC fans because it's funny, because a little banter is fun. At any rate, no, we didn't get to see Daniel, but he did get the honor of bringing the cup out to the field to give to Victor Montagliani, who did ultimately make the presentation. So,
Dwayne, 15 years ago. Sorry to interrupt, but 15 years ago, when you gentlemen decided to buy that cup, did you imagine that a former Italian national team player would raise that cup one day?
No, and I've said this story before.
Long ways.
Yeah, Torsten Frings has won it as well. I mean, lots of players that you just never would have imagined.
Marco Devaio, Piatti, Bernier. Yeah, it's getting good now. You know what? Bernier winning the Voyageurs Cup a couple years ago, it's like the circle coming around back. It was a good story as well.
Yeah, the last 3 years, 3 different teams have won the competition, so that's good for the competitive balance of it, I guess, too, as well. After TFC had won it 4 years straight prior to that. Look, I think it was necessary for TFC, for their confidence to get a win there like that. We've talked a lot in the recent days about their injuries and things like that. Things aren't looking great right now in TFC land. And truth be told, it wasn't the best effort over 90 minutes, but they stuck around close enough that away goal was always a factor. And ultimately, Vancouver lost the tie by their failure to break down TFC in the first leg, by their decisions in that first leg to allow TFC to take that 1-goal lead. And what did we say after it? We said, a lot of people think, it's advantage Vancouver because TFC didn't get enough goals. All crap. It was always advantage TFC because one away goal made all the difference in that tie. We said that heading in, and it turned out to be true.
And not just that, Duane. Some Whitecaps fan felt they were hard done by the fact that the goal was scored 14 seconds after technically what was the supposedly extra time, injury time allowed minutes, which was supposed to be 4 minutes, that Drew Fisher allowed it. At 4 minutes and 14 seconds, the goal of the Toronto FC, we can't see the Toronto FC, the goal of TFC appeared 4 minutes, 14 seconds in extra time. But this, if you remember, during those 4 minutes and 14 seconds, well, David Ousted took the ball and killed some time. So the 14 seconds after the original 4 minutes were maybe deserved. And the way the play happened, you cannot stop the play when it was an offense. So all those things combined, even though Robbo went to Drew Fisher after the game, I cannot read lips, but I can read gestures. And when you're pointing to your watch very angrily while mouthing words that starts with F towards the referee, I guess he wasn't happy with the call.
They got a yellow card in stoppage time, and I talk to the fourth officials all the time in my League One jobs, and I can tell you that it's point blank by the book. You add 30 seconds for a yellow card, so it was within that 30 seconds. That game is over if Vancouver clears that ball.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's their fault.
That's simple.
It's their fault. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and more to the point, as I said earlier, and I think some Vancouver fans might agree with me on this, is they lost the tie in the first leg, and ultimately, they're correct to say that they were the better team in the night last night. Absolutely. Should mention that Bono had one really nice save in that second half to keep TFC within 2. And, we were really a bit nervous with him. And, he had some distribution issues throughout the night. I was joking about that on Twitter and so on. But nonetheless, the kid did make a stop when it mattered. So good for his confidence. I still kind of wish Q played. But
he cannot play them all. That's the thing. Because he played in the weekend in TFC too. So you cannot play them all. And now that's the interesting factor with Toronto. 6 weeks with no Irwin. Right now, it could be less. It could be more. We never know how rehab goes. But a quad injury is never an easy injury for a soccer player, especially for a keeper. It's one of the muscles that you use all the time. So we'll see the ramification of that and who gets the starting job.
Yeah, exactly. Just real quickly before we move on and talk a little U.S. Open Cup, I was in the pub right at the end, and one of the biggest TFC fans who loves the CCL went, "Oh, bleepity bleep! It's going to be 20 bleepity 18 before we see the Champions League again."
2017, 2018.
Yeah, he thought it was going to be 2018 before they had a chance, but 30 seconds later, he was on the floor, and I got to tell you, I haven't seen a reaction to a goal in the pub like that in some time. I mean, that's luck. That's why you watch the game.
Just at the stadium. Go to the stadium, there was a shudder that just, and it just went quiet. It was, that's the thing with a stadium that's closed. As much as it's loud when it's really busy and people are going on, when it gets quiet, it gets quiet.
Yeah, there's some video out there of them singing celebration songs and then just stopping dead when the ball went in. Look, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be a Whitecaps fan. Well, I can because I followed Toronto for many years. So
Toronto, you know exactly how it feels.
I've been there in stoppage time before, not in a cup final, in the final like that, but which makes it a little more dramatic. But nonetheless, I ultimately have seen many stoppage time goals in my time. It's that said. For victors there are losers, and that's what makes the sport brilliant to have a goal like that. And like I said, the pub exploded. Like there was a guy that jumped up and the chairs were flying,
beers were spilled.
There's a YouTube video of "We Are the Champions" with some alternative lyrics that may not be safe for work that came out after the fact. So it was a fun little evening in the middle of the season. That's why we love the Voyageurs Cup. It happens in the middle of the season. It's the first title of the Major League Soccer season in any of the teams that we're eligible for, and it goes to Toronto FC into the treble.
Outside of the NASL spring season, but yes, if you consider that a title.
Well, MLS, I said, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, true, of course.
You missed my joke about a treble, TFC treble. No,
treble, no.
Supporters Shield, No, I think they're probably out of the Sports Shield race by now. So no. Anyway,
speaking of good nights last night, Duane, we had in Orlando an upset. We had an NASL team beat Orlando. Is actually it was in Orlando at Camping World Stadium. Fort Lauderdale Striker 2 in extra time versus Orlando City, a late goal that got Fort Lauderdale through in the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, the only upset of the round. So there is one remaining lower division team in the quarterfinals, Fort Lauderdale Strikers, who we said yesterday were one of the hottest teams going in, and I thought that might be the best chance for an upset. So hat tip for myself there.
Ding, 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 ding.
It should be a wager. We should wager.
Should have put money on it.
Exactly. All right. The rest of the results: Philly beat New York 2-1. Dallas beat Colorado 2-1. Houston beat Sporting Kansas City 3-1. The Cosmos had a 2-1 lead late. We almost had two teams through, but New England turned that around 1-3-2. And the Galaxy, who typically don't do that well in the U.S. Open Cup, they got the 1-0 lead. So that sets up the following semifinal matchups, Kevin. The Fort Lauderdale Strikers will be playing the Chicago Fire. So that's a decent draw for the minnow, I guess. Probably the weakest MLS team still in this, perhaps the weakest MLS team, period, against the Strikers. So you would give them a chance for an upset there and get to the semifinals, and that'd be good for them.
But it's the timing of the NSL that might be the trouble, because the game is going to be around July 20th, if not on July 20th, depending on the schedule and the time. It's still to be announced, depending on the site. With the Strikers against Chicago Fire, the Strikers would have been in quote-unquote off-season for almost a month when it comes July 20th. So it's to keep that momentum going, to keep that training. You don't have games that are meaningful between stints in U.S. Open. That might be the trouble for Fort Lauderdale, to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, you can start to see the NASL teams outside of the ones that were involved in the U.S. Open Cup. They're starting to play games again, but we're talking about friendlies and things like that, and scrimmages and the works. So it is a challenge for them for this tournament. But nonetheless, one team's still in it, so it will absolutely be hashtag NASL for the Strikers, I'm sure. Not so sure it would be that for the Cosmos, but for the Strikers, I'm pretty sure that most people will mind them.
The Strikers are loved, which is maybe not the case for the Cosmos throughout the NASL.
And to keep this on a TFC beat, there's like 5 former TFC players on the Strikers. It's kind of a weird little mix of TFC players from their battle days. So kind of fun there for that. So anyway, the rest of the matchups, the Revs and the Philly, Houston, Dallas, so a Texas derby there, and the Sounders played Galaxy. So, I got to think, just looking at this, who's the favorite in this draw? It's the Sounders, maybe, I guess, still, if they're the team that typically takes this seriously. Philly's lost the final 2 years in a row. Maybe this is their year, especially with their strong start to the season. So
Houston, I have to say, might be really willing for that tournament. They went a big win against the defending champion of the U.S. Open Cup, the Sporting Kansas City, 3-1 at home at BBVA Compass Stadium. Houston might be a team that's looking at the possibility of doing well in this tournament this year, and it's a Texas derby, so they're going to be up for that game. It will be probably in Houston, but just again, the site date and time is still to be determined.
Yeah, it's always a good way to look at the U.S. Open Cup, is to look at the MLS teams that are struggling a little bit, and they tend to say, okay, this is an opportunity to get something of the season. Look at DC United from a couple years ago. It does have that Champions League berth on the other side of it too, and increasingly more teams are interested in that. But
and if you look at just pragmatically, Duane, Champions League berth, what does it mean for an MLS team? Few extra roster spot and a couple more allocation money, and that is not to be discarded. So even for just that reason, the spot of the U.S. Open Cup is quite interesting for a team if they think they need more backup for the rest of the season, or the one that the season coming after.
Yeah, a little more gam to get there. So that's something for TFC fans to keep in mind too. It's been a few years since they've been back there, but that should help them with their depth issues. They'll have the ability to sign another player or two next year. But next year is next year, and it is a long wait before the Champions League will kick off at BMO Field. It will be out at BC Place again in next month, but we'll talk about that then. In the meantime, we're going to switch gears. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the Euro, which gets back going today.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Boom, 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 boom. Kevin,
Yes.
it's back. It's a long 2 days.
Wow, those 2 days were long, and I have to say, I'm quite angry at TSN this morning, Dwayne, and I have to tell you why. My DVR is programmed to record the Euro preview show every time there's one. It was scheduled to be last night at 1 a.m. Lo and behold, top 10 CFL baddest commentaries. I don't care. I wanted my Euro preview with my coffee this morning, and I couldn't. And you know, when you really want something and it's not there, I have that void today I need to fill it somehow.
It's almost like Bell has a stake in the CFL or something with all that canned CFL program they throw at us.
Almost,
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's kind of a strange little coincidence that. Anyway,
coincidence don't exist, Dwayne.
All right. Today kicks off Poland, Portugal. Again, as I said in the round of 16, it's not exactly the glamour matchup to start it all off, but nonetheless, Poland is a team that's defended very well. Hasn't really been that inspiring going forward, but nonetheless are where they're at. I mean, all these teams are in the quarterfinals, so you got to tip their hat there.
The last eight doesn't matter how they got there. They're the last eight.
Yeah, and Portugal, well, we all know what Portugal's done. They've won one game, but here they are.
Yeah, Dwayne, yesterday we talked about the upset and how you maybe should put money on Orlando. The bet of the day today is if there's a bet possible that you can just bet on the fact that this game might go to extra time, put that bet on, because those two teams needed extra time to move on to the quarters. And I wouldn't be surprised if does the same. The pressure, the amount of carefulness that they have, they're so careful. They don't want to take too much risk. They want to wait, set back. So this game is going in extra time.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, there is usually generally something way to bet on that. So if you want to do that, go ahead. I mean, even here in Ontario, you could bet that as the draw. But look, I don't know what to think of this game. I'm not all that pumped up for it, even though it's been 2 days and it's a quarterfinal of the European Championship. I really should be like, woo, but I'm not. It's kind of like,
well, that's because you were woo last night, but that's something else.
Yeah, we'll have a little nap after the show. It'll all be fine. But 3 o'clock will come around, fine. I'll order pizza. It'll all be good. But no, Portugal's just been mind-numbing throughout the tournament. That's what it comes down to. But they got that Ronaldo factor, and you just really can't ignore that, Kevin. So I have to say Portugal, to me, is the favorite in the game. They're maybe not the favorite, like betting favorite, but to me, they're probably the most likely to win this game. And it might be dire, and it might be ugly, and it might be an extra time. But I just can't get past the fact that this is Portugal's just going to annoy us all the way to the final now.
The Lehman's explanation of this battle could be the Ronaldo factor versus the Lewandowski factor. Is Lewandowski at the same level as Ronaldo? No. He's good. Like, he's very good. He's like world class and a lot of quality, even though this word is used way too often these days. But Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the best players, if not the best player in the world. So, there's that aspect that's always possible. A free kick 30 yards in, a great run to the goal, shots blocked. But you know what? Charisma was there. That is replicable in other games. So I wouldn't be surprised, like you mentioned, if Portugal squeeze in a goal in extra time or maybe even penalties today. Yeah,
look, I mean, it's one thing to have a great player, and I with TFC, to get back to them for a quick second, I watch them all the time, and they have a great player that gets marked out of that league all the time. Recently, people figure it out. There's a famous picture from the Copa final of Messi literally surrounded by 6 Chileans. So you can mark players out of a game. You're going to need other players to step up for Ronaldo to do this on his own. But as you said, this is a guy we're talking about that's either 1A or 1B in the world. So if anyone can break down, that kind of marking, it will be him. Poland has been very strong defensively, and I don't think we should overlook that in what's been a cagey defensive kind of Euro. It stands to reason that
they allowed one goal.
Yeah, just the one goal. That on a beautiful, it was a wonder goal too, right? So you can't really imagine that. At any rate, in this cagey Euro, you might imagine that it might be a defensive team that does an upset run. And Poland was widely considered to be a dark horse to perhaps make the final based on the draw and all that sort of good stuff leading into this tournament. So don't discount them, but I still can't get past Portugal as the favorite, Kevin. And any final thoughts before we move on and preview the other 3 games?
No, I have to say that I agree with you. Portugal is the favorite. But again, if this game is very defensive, like you mentioned, and Poland is able to not have one lapse of defensive abilities like it was the case against Switzerland in the 87th minute with that Shaqiri bicycle kick inside the box. So yes, it was a moment of brilliance by Shaqiri for Switzerland, but he was inside the box, got the ball, so he created that chance. So for Poland, if they, like you mentioned, surround Ronaldo with a few defenders all the time, and they're able to give the service to Lewandowski, because let's not lie to each other, that's what's been missing in this tournament for this team, is that final pass to a Robert Lewandowski. If they get that one opportunity and a clinical finisher like him does the job, Poland could squeeze out what we consider an upset. But yes, Portugal for me would be my my odds-on favorite in this game. I would put my money on Portugal.
All right, let's move on. That's the game today, obviously, so we'll spend a little bit more time on it. But let's look at the other three matchups. The other game on that side of the draw, on the weak side of the draw, the upset side of the draw, whatever you want to call it, is Wales-Belgium. Belgium has looked very good after the initial game, Kevin, and Wales has done very well as well. But I don't think they're quite at the same level as Belgium at this particular time. And when you look at those four teams, as much as I just talked about Portugal and how I'm convinced they're going to annoy us all the way to the final, I do think that you have to give the nod to Belgium now that they seem to have things going in their direction as the best, most talented team in that quadrant. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go to the final, but certainly everything's lined up for it at this point.
Yes, exactly. And the way Belgium looked in their last two victories was amazing. They were able to have great individual performances from De Bruyne, from Hazard, but combined with a great team performance. And Lukaku was able to take advantage of his strength and hide his weakness. And sometimes that's what you have to do with that type of striker. Give him the ball in occasion opportunity where he will shine and will succeed. And that's what we have seen. And I have to do a mea culpa. You remember earlier in this the history of this show, in the tournament as well, I did my kit standings, which kit I like, which kit I didn't like. I have to say I did give a bad review to the dark kit of Belgium, but the white ball, the gray and cycling inspired one, wow, it's the nicest one in the whole tournament.
Yes. So an English, Scottish, and Irish man walks into a bar. Well, three men walk into a bar, and they turned on to watch Wales play in the Euro quarterfinals. That's the joke.
No, you know what I liked? I saw a picture today that you saw Griezmann and Payet carrying France. You saw Portugal carrying Ronaldo carrying Portugal, and you saw an airplane carrying in England.
There you go. It's high watermark for Wales. This is going to be something that I imagine every TV set in that nation will be tuned to. That will be something that they will remember for a long time, and most Welsh expats all over the world will be tuned in with bated breath. But it will be a tough ask. That said, I mean, if you had told a Welsh person a year and a half ago, and this is a cliche, I appreciate it to do the "if you told them then" kind of thing, but if you had, I'm pretty sure most would take Poland, Portugal, Belgium to get to a Euro final in a heartbeat, because as much as maybe they might not win that's a hell of a nice draw for a country like Wales. And they continue to be, if it wasn't for Iceland, they would be the story of this tournament. And I think that maybe the fact that Iceland's there kind of taking those headlines and England's sort of distracting away with their tire fire that's going on right now, that it might be helping the Welsh, so reducing that pressure because less people are paying attention to them. There's less pressure on them that way. So that's an interesting fact. It's going to be an interesting game. That one might be the game of the quarterfinals that I'm most looking forward to, because I'm not entirely sure where it'll go. I do think obviously Belgium's the favorite, but I do give the Welsh a chance, and I think whoever gets through that will be kind of a nice little vision in the semifinal, like a newer team that's on the ascendancy. That'll be nice to see them go there. So I'm kind of looking forward to that one, Kevin.
Yeah, and you just mentioned England. The latest rumor a few hours ago, maybe they're going after Diego Simeone as the coach for the FA. So that could be interesting, but it's very far from being done. He's a coach of Atletico Madrid.
Yes, he doesn't speak English that well. So
exactly. You need to hire a translator as well.
Quite know that one, and I don't think that the English prima donnas on that team are going to take the Simeone. That would be an interesting match.
What do you mean pass the ball? What do you mean pass the ball?
What do you mean tackle with intent? What do you mean defend?
What? Joe? Yeah. Exactly.
No. And when, anyone who's listened to me knows how I have a lot of time for Simeone. I think he might be the best manager in the world right now, but I don't know whether he's the right manager for a national team like England, because I'm not too sure whether the egos in that room would take to someone like that.
Yes, that is very true, especially the older's ego in that room, if they're even then there when the time comes.
All right, a few minutes left in this block. That's 2 more games. We're going to go to the other side of the draw, the crazy side of the draw, the hard side of the draw, and obviously the game that most people are going to focus on. And if you're a casual fan, probably the one that you're going to most likely watch above the other 4 is Germany, Italy, and the Germans. I don't know. Like, is there a favorite in that game? Because the Italians have looked very good in this tournament, but Germany's Germany, and as we said the other day, maybe we're all guilty of trying to be a little too cute when we're making predictions in this tournament, and the Germans will just end up winning.
Yeah, well, it's because it's Germany, right? It's not sexy. It's not the most beautiful thing you ever seen, but gets the job done. It's regular like clockwork, and it's well built. It's a German car. That's what this team is. And any given day, it can come out and win the tournament. And they haven't looked amazing in this tournament, but they're building their confidence. They're building slowly and slowly. And their coach, Joachim Löw, is very hard on them, saying, look, even if you score 3-4 times against a smaller team, you need to score more. You need to create more chances. You need to be more compact, more solid together as a formation, because you're going to play better teams as games come by. So it is a team that's still kept on the edge of their seat, even though they just seem like they're cruising through this tournament so far.
Yeah, look, there was a video that was released the other day. This is going to seem a little strange to point out, but it was them playing beach volleyball at their compound, right? And I was reminded again of Das Reboot, the book that we talk about all the time, and how much the Germans plan for everything around that team. And there's a lot of chapters in that talking about the compound at the World Cup and how they set everything up to try and create a team harmony that sort of allowed everyone to have some downtime. And it was like structured downtime, for lack of a better way to put it. And it just, when I saw that image of them kind of goofing around playing beach volleyball, it reminded me of those chapters in that book. And it made me think that the Germans have a good team chemistry going again. And when they do that, when they're not self-imploding, they're awfully tough to beat. So I would put them as the narrow favorite in this. But the Italians, you got to give them full credit that in many ways, they of the quote unquote big nations in this tournament, I think that maybe they've been the most impressive throughout.
Yeah.
Particularly when you think about how little expectation there was put upon them by most people heading in. Now that said, I remember when I was ranking my, ranking out all 24 teams at the start of the tournament, I kept moving them up and up and up, because ultimately you look at Italy and you go, you know what, I can't put them any lower. They have to, they're Italy, for God's sakes. So,
and Antonio Conte has been so far the coach of the tournament. If such an award were to exist, it would be Antonio Conte. The way he managed and he tactically adjusted his team to have almost one more player available than all the other one. The famous Italian 3-back line. Well, that's what it gives you when you go back and catch them on a break, or when you're allowed to do that transition from the defense to the midfield faster. That one guy that's more free because you have 3 solid back line, well, he goes forward. And we see that happen for Italy in the way they are set up. It's quite an amazing job by Conte, which a lot of people were saying, he doesn't care about this tournament. He already has his head in Chelsea and thinking about what he's going to do next year. I don't think so. I think he wants to lift that trophy before he goes to London.
Well, it'd be kind of silly to think that no one doesn't want to win. I mean, that's always kind of fan talk, right?
Exactly.
All right.
You're right. It's always silly talk. You're right.
One more game to talk about, of course, is the kind of the game that has that Cinderella story in Iceland and France. The host playing the Cinderella team. Any chance for Iceland in this one, Kevin?
I don't think so. I think the weight of a nation will carry this French team forward. Again, you mentioned last week that this French team has a 1998 aura to them, where they never look great, but they always squeeze out the result. They get that late goal, that equalizer and that late goal. They still haven't scored a goal in the first half of this tournament. So that is probably their greatest achievement they need to do against Iceland on Sunday is to get that goal first. Get that goal in the first half earlier on, so you actually put Iceland on the ropes and make them have to go for it. Then with the amount of skills and talent level that you do have, especially speed wise, you catch him on a counter with a Pogba, it's 2-0 France. That is what I would do for the blueprint of this game. We'll see if that what happens, but France will want to score goals early, which is the one thing they haven't done in this tournament so far.
Yeah, I mean, the ball is round, so there's a chance, obviously. But I do think that it would be – they're playing with house money right now, Iceland, and I think they're probably pretty satisfied with where they are. Obviously any professional is going to want to continue to win, and they're going to go out there and attempt to do that. But nonetheless, I think that it would be a bit of a stretch to make an argument for how Iceland wins this game. Obviously, they're going to be the sentimental favorite for the vast majority of the world if they're not French. Most people will be tuning into that one to hope for that upset, and I think we all like to see a Cinderella go as deep as possible. But usually, this is where it ends, right? So I can't see it going much further. But even if it does end here, even if they get blown out, I don't see that happening. I think probably this is going to be like a 2-0 game for France. Everyone's still going to applaud them off the pitch and remember this tournament is the tournament that Iceland did what Iceland did, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Duane.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to have a little MLS talk in our next block.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
What we thought we'd do with this block, Kevin, is that we thought we'd have a little talk about the MLS transfer window, which opens up on July 4th. The other day, I asked the listeners how they wanted us to report rumors, and most people kind of fell in the middle. That they wanted us to have some kind of discretion with it, but nonetheless, that they do enjoy having some conversations about who's coming in and who might go and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I thought this would be a good way to sort of talk that thing. And we might, moving forward, look to have maybe every other week have a rumors expert come in, because, it's not something that I have the time to chase all those rumors around, because it's a lot of work to do that. But certainly I think it's something that interests some people. So without any further ado, without getting into specifics right now, just in a general sense, Kevin, and we'll start with the teams we know best. Do you anticipate much movement in the summer window for the Impact?
I anticipate 1 or 2. 1, because of what happened this week with the fact that Maxime Tissot was waived, David Choignard was signed. But with this, you have 27 out of 28 rosters players filled. You got 1 empty spot, and Montreal will be looking to add some maybe attacking midfielder power or a backup striker on top, depending on where Romero is on his rehab. Soon as Romero comes back on full form, full fitness, he's probably going to come back on the right side of the midfielder, the attacking midfield. So you will have Dominic Oduro as your second striker. So that could be a possibility for Montreal to have a second striker. And we've seen Oduro play with Drogba on top with some sort of great result last week. It was not necessarily always beautiful, but it was there. The chances and the creativity was there with Piatti when he came back. So that is there. I do see 1 movement or 2 for the Montreal Impact, again, to solidify either the help of Donadel, but that's the thing. Montreal will have addition without even doing roster moves because of players returning from injury over the next couple of weeks. We're talking about Donny Toya. We're talking about Andres Romero and Marco Donadel over the next few weeks or month that will be coming back for this club to help them in the thick of things of the summer. So just one roster movement will bring this team to a complete roster and maybe a complete team in the eyes of Mauro Biello.
Yeah, and look, I the Impact have had a strange season so far, right? Like, I mean, they had that gangbuster start.
And a lot of injuries, I have to be honest. And the Drogba hasn't looked the same with the team with Drogba and the chemistry hasn't looked the same, but it's a bias factor because when Drogba was there, Piatti wasn't there. There was players that were injured all the time. So you never got the full strength lineup all at the same fitness level at the same time. So you never really got the real Montreal this year up to this point, I think.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you talk about the. It's almost like having to transfer in when you have injured players returning, and if I move it
exactly,
and when I move it to TFC, I mean I think there's probably no team in the league right now that has that more evident when you're talking about Josie Altidore. No one, it's become a meme in Toronto. He does good work off the ball meme, because a lot of people are frustrated that Josie hasn't scored this year. But the truth is, he does do good work off the ball, and it is a factor to TFC's ability to score. If you watched that game last night, it was a study in frustration for Javinko. He wasn't trusting his players up front with him. He trusts Josie, and that makes all the difference. It allows him to get deeper. Javinko is getting a lot of shots right now, but they're all from like 30 yards. So, and he creates those opportunities, and occasionally he hits them. But, I mean, that's not a recipe for success. And when you look at TFC right now, 17 goals for in 15 games, that's just not good enough. And they're going to need to address that, whether that means Josie's coming back or whether they bring in an additional veteran presence. And we talk about those MLS lifers, and maybe with TFC's case, a trade might be the way to do that. I'm just not too sure who you target in that, and especially with this keeping situation. As I said the other day, though, with the keeping situation, I think you just try and suck it up. Bono made a couple saves there. He's not anywhere close to what Irwin is, and his distribution was just god-awful. But maybe you rotate him and Q over the next few weeks and you see what you have moving forward, because ultimately you have to make a decision on those kids too. So that's what I see Toronto doing, is sort of trying to do something to address that secondary scoring issue and just to take the pressure off Javinko, because I think if you get a secondary scorer in there for him, you're going to find that he's more productive. And that ultimately is what could propel Toronto forward, because, as much as they haven't really been good over the last 5-6 weeks, they are just hanging around there, only 7 points off of the top spot in the East right now.
Two cases in the league that attracts my attention, Duane, to move to more MLS focus. DC United is a team that has 29 of 28 spots of their roster filled. They have to do a move very soon. I wouldn't be surprised to see DC United try to unload one of their big contracts of old veteran they do have in their team right now, trying to get a little younger heading into next year to build a different project in the near future. That would be what my thinking towards DC United, because they have 29 out of 28 spots, but only 4 international spots occupied. So they have things to play around if they want to. And the other interesting case that might be the exact opposite for me, Duane, it's Dallas. They have only 25 of 28 spots. Well, only. So they have 3 spots open to do something if they want. They do have as well 1 or 2 available international spots. Yes, they have 8 out of 10. So that could be another way for Dallas to get something in this transfer market. A team that hasn't lived up to expectations so far this year as much as people hoped. Maybe not necessarily a big name. They already have their 3 DPs, but a player that can help them solidify the midfield and defense-wise, and maybe even a defender could be what Dallas needs.
And in terms of teams that might make a big splash in this window, and it's tough to make a big splash in the summer window with MLS because you're coming mid-season, you're competing directly with the most competitive transfer window with European clubs, right? Most of the big moves happen over there in the summer, so MLS is kind of in many ways picking the scraps up here because it's just difficult to do. However, I do think if there's one team out there that might roll the dice big, it's Seattle. They do have a spot available. They are absolutely struggling at 1.07 points per game, 16 points.
I thought you were going to say they're struggling at soccer. I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Siggy Schmidt's got to feel the pressure. There was a lot of talk about him not even coming back last year. So, I would think that if they set that team up too to try and take one last run at a title. And so far outside of the U.S. Open Cup,
it's Diogo Martins, I think, is still the one subtraction of that team that really still hurts them to this day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you had him and Dempsey running around, you had two frontline strikers that were unmatched in the league, and you just can't replace that. So can they go out and find someone else willing to come in? It's tough, and it's always tough in the January window. But you do have the option of bringing in a half-season DP, and that's something that you might want to look out for. It's, I think, a mechanism that's not necessarily used as much as it could be in MLS. Because there's less risk. If you bring a guy in on a big number, it prorates, right? So basically you sign him to a 12-month contract starting now, and you're only having half of it hit the cap this year, and you can fit a bigger name player in for the second half of the season. It's like a rental in some ways. Doesn't work out if you work the buyout out in the offseason because you have that one buyout that you can use.
Well, like Drogba last year in Montreal.
Absolutely, yeah. You get a big name coming in that's near the end, and that's, to me, yeah, it's Seattle that would make that move. Other teams that I might see do some tweaking. Obviously, we talked about Vancouver yesterday. The Galaxy are kind of hovering around there, but they're pretty tough. They're pretty tough against the cap, I would think, and I think they're set with what they are. And I think the Galaxy are just galaxying.
And quickly, just to mention on Seattle before we go too far on with the Galaxy, they have one DP spot open for Seattle. They only have two. Only have Nelson Valdez and Clint Dempsey. So I wouldn't be surprised if the big name we're talking about for Seattle could be a possibility and a DP as well.
Yeah, the other team I could see tweaking a little bit is Houston. They are obviously at the foot of the West. New coach in there. It's a continuation. It's an intern coach, but nonetheless, I think that there might be some desire to start the rebuilding process away from Coyle, with maybe adding a couple players here and there. But this is not easy. And then you look at the option of trades too, and that's another way that I think MLS fans get focused on transfers in because they're sexier. That we kind of ignore the bread and butter way of changing your roster up, which is throwing some players around. And I look at TFC and they're defensive, and I look at Nick Hagelin showing that he can do a job out at right back. But so he's versatile and can play a couple different positions. That might be a player they can move to try and address that issue. But any other players, any other teams jumping out at you that you might see a movement coming in, Kevin?
Well, it's hard to say off the top, but teams like the New York Red Bulls, who are built as a team and are on the cusp, are climbing in the Eastern Conference table for the last month and a half. They're playing really well. They have only two DPs. They have 26 of 28 spot of their roster filled. They have space. They have money. And they have probably a DP spot open that are willing to go get one if they see a fit. So it's always a question of, do we see a fit? Is that player going to help us? Now, the Red Bulls want to go a step further than they were. They want to win the MLS Cup, and for that they will need a DP, I think, and third one, and maybe a bigger name to help with the clinical finish of this team and to help everything else surrounding this team to raise them a little level. That's maybe just what they need to break through as the team they are. So we'll see.
All right, and all of this is said without even bringing up the one transfer we know is happening, and that, of course, is Tim Howard coming in to Colorado, top of the West, Colorado, 2 points per game, Supporter Shield leaders, Colorado. I wonder about that one, and I wondered about it since they signed it, and McMath is doing a job for them there. There is the potential, I don't know, this is speculation, but there is the potential that he might actually end up hurting that team if that chemistry is thrown off. So we'll see what happens there, but certainly that's something that's coming in as well.
The other transfer that we think might be for sure done is Octavio Rivero with Vancouver on his way to Chile for Colo Colo. It hasn't been officially announced, but hasn't played the last few games, even though he's healthy 100%. There's more than just speculation here. If you're looking at everything behind the scenes, it's almost done, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, there's, you look around, there's some other rumors out there. A gentleman by the name of Nicolas Ladero. He's trying to think what nationality is. Anyway, I'm not sure. He's Latin. Obviously, he's allegedly been sold to the MLS. They didn't say what team it was for $300,000. You could find these rumors out there right now. It is silly season, and it's getting in full bore on July 4th. So watch out. Lots more of this talk coming up in the near future. Kevin, let's take a quick break, and we'll end the show with some bits and bites news items.
Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com.
We're back. Kevin, let's do a Bits and Bites piece at the end. Yes. I like calling it Bits and Bites. It's making me hungry. I want to go get the famous Canadian snack Bits and Bites after this. So this segment is brought to you by Bits and Bites.
As long as you don't talk about kibble and bits, it's all good.
Yeah, Bits and Bites is kind of a trail mix, I guess. Garlicky trail mix.
Oh,
if you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not really healthy, though. It's really just junk food, but it's very tasty. It's a garlic. If you like garlic. Anyway, all right, let's look around here. You wanted to talk about your favorite USL team.
Yes. Reno 1868, the longest-running football club in North America.
There you go.
Are affiliated with the San Jose Earthquakes, or the Quakes, for the upcoming season. There's more details to the partnership, but it's interesting, and it geographically makes a lot of sense when you're talking about a 4.5-hour drive between Reno and the Quakes. It's a situation that, first of all, you just cross the Sierra Nevada and you're in Reno. It's possible to have an exchange of players, send a couple players for a few days to get a game in. Talk about players on the front of the Quakes here that need playing time. You can just send them down the highway, 4.5 hours. They're in Reno, they can play. And not just that, the fact that there's a couple of teams in California of the USL, especially in Sacramento, it's a way that they're on the road in Sacramento. It's an hour drive. Let's come in here. There's a lot of possibilities geographically why this partnership makes a lot of sense.
Just makes sense from a geographical standpoint. The only criticism I would give it is that why aren't they creating a 2-team? I know the answer to that, and it has to do with
money, investment. Yeah, the Academy of San Jose was one of the least extent academy in the entire league.
Yeah, no, I've seen rankings of MLS academies that place San Jose is consistently near the bottom. It's not a team that particularly values that part. They're doing the bare minimum because they're required to, and it would be pretty stunning if they actually created a USL team. So this is a good step for them to actually have the affiliate close by. Speaking of affiliates and 2 teams, the one team that everyone wonders why they don't have a USL team, standalone team, is Dallas. There was an interview this week that on Extra Time Radio, the in-house podcast of Major League Soccer, that the Dallas Academy director mentioned that they do expect something on that front within the next year. And I think everyone is very interested to see what a Dallas 2, whatever nickname you want to give them, does in the USL, because that's a team that really needs it. But unfortunately with them, it really just is a finance issue. It isn't free to run a USL team, right? Like, it's just not snapping your fingers. You do have to invest on it. Not every club has the same level of ownership that wants to make that kind of investment. And I think Dallas has to maybe sell a couple players along that they've created from their academy to get the money to make a 2-team, which would be the next logical step for them.
I would call the 2-team of Dallas the JRs. Come on. In Dallas, you call them the JRs. Come on. The Ewings, come on, that would be the best 2 teams outside of 1868.
There you go. All right, let's move on. Poku, that sale is through. So he is going to Miami. I gave my opinion on that. That's
exactly.
Yeah. What do you think I have a feeling he's going to be one of those urban legends in a couple years where people remember him as this cult hero that just kind of disappeared. That's kind of my take on him, but
yeah,
maybe I'll be wrong.
Maybe he's the new Chad Barrett. Something like that.
Chad Barrett is the I do this argument all the time. He's scoring again too. Chad Barrett is something like the 12th all-time leading scorer amongst active players in Major League Soccer. Like, it's absurd. Like, look at Chad Barrett's stats one day and compare them. Like, he has had a career and a half that most players would kill for. So don't be dissing the Chad, anyone. He's yes, he does miss a lot of sitters, but he does get a few in too. So good for the Chad to still be. And there's a reason he's still playing too. MLS lifer, right?
Yep, exactly. No, so it's interesting. Other couple of tidbits of news.
Yeah, Gilberto, old Gil, TFC. They brought him in as a DP. Ended up
the guy who got screwed. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when they brought in Michael Bradley, they had to move him on, and he ended up in Chicago after a little bit away, and he's never really settled in Chicago, and they negotiated a mutual termination this year. So that's too bad, because Gilberto, it's actually funny. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about TFC and Gilberto right now, and he actually would work with TFC right now in terms of their setup, because he is kind of a hold-up player. He is kind of a big body in there that might be able to work off of Javenko, and he's a little healthier typically than Mr. Altidore. So that said, he obviously wasn't settled in North America, and he never really lived up to the DP tag that he had in Toronto FC. So we wish him well. A decent player, never really a DP though, in my opinion.
No, exactly. Especially not after the movement that the change of philosophies of level of DPs that Toronto went after. It changed when he got there, like a few months after. Like, oh, okay, we're gonna change this, and well, off you go.
Yeah, just looking through quick. I mean, there's I don't know. The friendlies are starting this week. TFC is not involved in that, so I'm not really front of mind. What are your thoughts on the friendlies? The friendlies, not trophy stuff. I heard the Impactor actually might be a
friendly against AS Roma or something. I heard that too. There's no confirmation. I'm not a fan of friendlies, because friendly, when it's outside of your competitive season, I have no problem. A friendly in an international break that gives you at least like a game so you can stretch the legs of the players, I have no problem. A friendly in the midweek between two games that you have already scheduled, that's where I have a problem. And it all depends how they look at it, how they do it. Example, you mentioned Roma. If Montreal plays Roma, but it's basically FC Montreal playing against Roma, and the top A lineup is kept healthy and informed for what counts this year for the Impact, which is Major League Soccer, I have no problem. If it's the other way around, they start Piazzi and Drogba and those players against, example, in AS Roma, that has no meaning whatsoever in the season, or even they fill the stadium. Stade Saputo has been pretty consistently filled this season. Why would you even go there? So that's my opinion. If you are a startup team that's not selling a lot of tickets and have the opportunity to play against Real Madrid, go for it. Outside of that, it's hard to justify for me the minutes wasted on those type of games of your first lineup.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm well known to my position on this. If there was a way that you could bring in these clubs and have them legitimately play the two teams, I'd be all for that, because I think it is a good experience for the young players to test themselves against talent. But of course, when you pay the fees to bring those guys in, you can't afford to put your two team out there. You have to put your main team out there to try and draw the numbers to sell the tickets to the more casual fans that are interested in those.
Here's an example for you, Duane, that comes from last year. Remember Santiago Castaño, goalkeeper of New York Red Bulls 2, that played his first game for the Red Bulls 1 against Chelsea, and he stopped a Lampard shot, and he was so happy, and it started his career. That is why you might need a friendly. But outside of that, there's no reason that there should have a friendly.
Yeah, and look, I made a point last year. I did go to the second half of the Sunderland game against TFC, because I wanted to see the kids play against Sunderland, because I do enjoy that aspect of it. I don't at all like the fact that the first team's being forced to play these games, and I'm glad that the Toronto FC management this year has decided against it. But there is some value there, and there was Roma. You speaking of Roma, they sent their U21 team over to play the TFC 2 last year, and that was an interesting experiment and something that I'd like to see more of. I like the youth teams or the academy teams playing and challenging themselves against different types of teams from around the world. They're not going to draw the same numbers, obviously. They're not money-making operations; they're development processes, and I think that that's something that would be valuable. But in terms of the having Roma play the Impact, friendlies trophies not friendlies. That's my philosophy. The hashtag that Seattle folks started a few years ago.
And same for the International Champions Cup, United States, and all the MLS teams involved. It's, for me, again, it's not the right timing. It's during a season. It's not the same. I think you're telling your fan that your season is not as important when you're having one of those games. And it's not about the message sometimes. It's the unintended message, and that's what the real diehard supporters get from those games.
Yeah. All right. On that note, Kevin, I think that we'll wrap for the day. If you haven't had a chance yet, listen to our 100th episode of the Five Rings podcast, our Olympic show. We're very proud of that show. As I said, 100 numbered episodes. We've actually done like 7,322 of them. But
actually over 200, but yes.
Yes. So the 100th official was yesterday. So we reminisced a little bit and had a little show as well. That will go live during the Olympics. Anything else on the network that you want to promote before we say goodbye, Kevin?
For the next 4 days, the Euro After Show will be back at 5:30 p.m. every day to talk about the quarterfinal game that just wrapped up. So tonight, 5:30 p.m. on SPN Radio, the Euro After Show. Same as my Tour de France preview show will come out either tonight or tomorrow morning, working on the preparation of this. Kevin talks about cycling, the Tour de France 2016 preview that starts this weekend and until tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the Sports Podcasting Network. For Soccer Today, well, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.